ॐ ध्यायामोधवलावकुण्ठनवतीं तेजोमयीं नैष्ठिकीं स्निग्धापाङ्गविलोकिनीं भगवतीं मन्दस्मितश्रीमुखीं वात्सल्यामृतवर्षिणीं सुमधुरं सङ्कीर्तनालापिनीं श्यामाङ्गीं मधुसिक्तसूक्तिम् अमृतानंदात्मिकाम् ईश्वरी। Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Awakened Youth Unite for Dharma, or Ayudh, has a series of events every year. So as we all know, January 12th is celebrated as National Youth Day to commemorate the birth of Swami Vivekananda. Ayudh all over the world celebrate it in a very grand way. Since January 12th was a working day and the adjoining Saturday, Sunday is Sankranti or Pongal, an important festival for which all of us need to be at home doing puja. So we will celebrate Swami Vivekananda Jayanti in an elaborate way with many events like essay competition, speech competition, etc. later. However, today we will listen to a brief talk by Shri Krishna Kumar, who is basically from Chennai, living in Bangalore for the past 4 years near Amrita College, Bengaluru. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha.
Om Gham Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Shri Amriteshwarye Namaha. I bow down at Amma's lotus feet and invoke Amma's divine grace and blessings. My humble submissions to Swamiji Amrita Gitananda Puri for giving me this opportunity to talk a few words on the auspicious Jayanti of Swami Vivekananda. Many a times from young age, all of us have heard few of his famous quotes again and again. Arise awake and stop not until the goal is reached. Take up one idea, make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves and every part of your body be full of that one idea and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success. All power is within you. You can do anything and everything. The greatest sin is to think yourself weak. Be a hero. Always say, I have no fear. Stand up, be bold, be strong. Take the whole responsibility on your shoulders and know that you are the creator of your own destiny. Who's this great being whose words are so potent, so sharp, so direct as to pierce into the deepest part of us on the inside and awaken us to act with energy, enthusiasm, fearlessness and inner strength? In this talk, let us try to get a glimpse of Swami Vivekananda's life in 3 parts. Part 1, his glorious speech at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, 1893. Part 2, his early life and his spiritual transformation. Part 3, his powerful message to the youth. Part 1, his glorious speech at the Parliament of Religions, Chicago in 1893. One morning, early in September 1893, Mrs. George Hale looked out through a window of her beautiful home in Chicago and saw, seated on the opposite side of the street, a young man from eastern part of the world, dressed in a turban and the ochre robe of a Hindu monk. She, being an unconventional woman, did not call the police to report a stranger on the move. She did not ask her servants to go and inquire what he wanted. She noticed that he was unshaven, his clothes were crumpled and dry, but there was a kind of a royal air around him. He sat there on the bench, perfectly composed, meditative and serene. He did not look as if he had lost his way. In fact, Swami Vivekananda did not attend any personality development program. What attracted her to him was his spiritual magnetism that he had developed through his devotion to his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, a toothless old man. She made an intelligent guess. she walked straight to him and asked very politely, "Sir, are you a delegate at the Parliament of Religions?" He smiled and introduced himself as Swami Vivekananda, telling her that he had come to Chicago 2 months back for the same conference, just coming to know that this conference had been postponed by 2 months. With no money at hand, he was suggested to go to Boston and spend 2 months there. He stayed there giving various talks at churches and social gatherings. He was be asked a lot of silly questions about his country. He was made fun by the children due to his funny clothes. Just 2 days back, Professor J.H. Wright bought him a ticket and asked to go to Chicago to attend the Parliament meeting, saying that he will be welcomed there even though he does not have any invitation. Professor J.H. Wright said, "Just like the sun doesn't need a permission to shine, you, Swami, do not need any credentials to be welcomed in the Parliament of Religions." Professor had also given him the address of the committee which was in charge of the delegates, but Swamiji had lost the address in transition. He slept on the railroads. He woke up in the morning and wandered across the roads and the streets of Chicago. Finally, after not being able to find the address, he came near a bench. He sat down. He resigned himself and just said, "Whatever may happen, let it happen." He surrendered completely to the will of God and awaited what the next moment had for him. So this is the right moment when Mrs. Hale saw Swamiji from her window and came and inquired about his nature. As Swamiji was telling all this, she intently listened, and then both Mr. and Mrs. Hale invited Swamiji into their house, requested him to wash, shave and have breakfast, and both of them accompanied him to the headquarters of the committee responsible for accommodation of delegates. How strange are the ways of God. During the first morning session, when his turn came to speak, Swami Vivekananda excused himself and asked for more time, as he had a bit of stage fright, and also he noticed that he didn't prepare a ready-made speech. However, in the afternoon, he rose to his feet and spoke. He started his speech by saying, "Sisters and brothers of America." The crowd was so mesmerized just by this statement of his that it gave him a 2-minute standing ovation by clapping and cheering wildly. Nothing of this sort of a demonstration had happened for any of the previous speakers. We can only guess that maybe the crowd intuitively felt that they were in the presence of an unusual person whose words expressed exactly what he was. Simple truth fully meant from his heart and soul. Swami Vivekananda's speech at the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago on September 11, 1893 is famous for its opening line, "Sisters and Brothers of America." This speech is considered to be a defining moment in the introduction of Hinduism and Indian spirituality to the Western world. He began his speech by acknowledging the presence of different religions and cultures and emphasized on the universality of all religions. He spoke of his belief in the unity of all existence and the potential for self-realization through spiritual practices. He also touched on the importance of tolerance and acceptance of others' beliefs. He also spoke about the importance of practical religion and the need to go beyond mere belief to actually living one's religion. Swamiji quoted few lines from Shiva Mahimna Stotra, Bhagavad Gita and various Upanishads to explain the philosophy of Vedanta, emphasizing the unity of all existence and the potential for self-realization through spiritual practices. Quoting text 7 of Shiva Mahimna Stotra, "Trayi Sankyam Yoga Pashupati Matam Vaishnavamiti Prabhinne Prasthane Paramidhamada Patyamiti Cha रुचीनां वैचित्र्या ऋज्जुकुटिल नाना पतजुषं नृणामेको गम्यस् त्वमसि पयसा marnava iva, meaning different paths to realization are enjoined by the three Vedas, by Sankhya Yoga, Pashupata, Shaiva doctrine and Vaishnava Shastras. People follow different paths, straight or crooked, according to their temperament, depending on which they consider best or most appropriate, and reach you, God alone, just as rivers enter the ocean. Quoting Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verse 11, Ye yata mam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham mama vartamanur vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. Sri Krishna says, in whatever way people surrender unto me, I reciprocate accordingly. Everyone follows my path, knowingly or unknowingly, O son of Partha. It was a standing ovation that Swamiji received by approximately 7,000 people. Though it was a short speech, it took away the hearts and emotions of thousands of people and voiced the spirit of the parliament. The press called him the cyclonic monk from India. The New York Herald denoted Vivekananda was undoubtedly the greatest figure in the parliament of religions. He spoke many times on Buddhism and Hinduism till the parliament ended. He left a great mark and became one of the greatest orators. Swami Vivekananda's speech was widely reported in the American press and was considered a success. It created a great sensation and influence among Americans and Europeans. His speech is widely considered to have introduced Hinduism to the Western world and to have played a major role in the growth of interest in Eastern spiritual practices in the West. It also helped establish Swami Vivekananda as one of the most important figures in the Indian Renaissance and made him one of the most sought after speakers and teachers on spiritual matters in the United States. Speaking of his work in America after returning to India, he said, "If I had preached the personality of Sri Ramakrishna, I might have changed half the world. But that kind of change is short-lived. So instead, I preached Sri Ramakrishna's principles. If people accept the principles, they will eventually accept the personality." After this event, he spent 2 years in US lecturing in various places and made a great impression on many great thinkers, attracted few students who dedicated their lives to the practice of his teachings. He founded Vedanta societies in America across many places and finally reached India in 1897 along with few of his ardent devotees, Captain and Mrs. Seaver, J.J. Goodwin and Margaret Noble, who later became Sister Nivedita, who devoted the rest of her life to education of Indian women and the cause of India's independence. Once he reached India in 1897, he called a meeting of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna and established the Ramakrishna Mission and Ramakrishna Mutt, consecrated at Belur opposite to Ganga near Dakshineshwar. Thus, he was a key leader of the Vedanta movement which sought to revive and popularize the spiritual and philosophical teachings of Hinduism in the modern world. Part 2. His early life and his spiritual transformation. Swami Vivekananda was born as Narendranath Datta in an aristocratic Bengali traditional family in Calcutta on Jan 12, 1863. He was one of the 9 siblings. His father's name was Vishwanath Datta, who was an attorney at Calcutta High Court. His mother, Bhubaneshwari Devi, was a homemaker and devoted her life to her family. The rational and religious thinking of his parents had a great influence on him that made him a good person and helped him in shaping his personality. Swami Vivekananda was influenced and inclined towards spirituality at an early age and used to meditate before the images of deities like Shiva, Rama and Hanuman. He was a naughty child in his childhood and his parents found it difficult to control him. He went to Ishwarachandra Vidyasagar's Metropolitan School and later to Presidency College. He liked to read different subjects like philosophy, religion, history, social science, art, and literature. He also had interest in reading Hindu scriptures such as Vedas, Upanishads, the Ramayana, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas. He also got training in Indian classical music. He used to participate in sports activities, physical exercise regularly organized by the school. He also studied Western philosophy and logic and European history at the General Assembly's institution. He completed his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1884. While he was studying Western philosophies, he also learnt Sanskrit scriptures and Bengali literature. Even the principal of Christian College, Calcutta, William Hastie, praised Narendra and wrote that he had never come across such a genius and intellectual student in his life. He never found such an artistic and intelligent lad even in German universities and among philosophical students. Narendra was known for his speaking skill. He was a great orator. He was briefly part of a movement called Brahma Samaj to modernize Hinduism. It so happened that one of his relatives was a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and also one of his teachers, Professor Hastie, who had actually met him. What these two people had to say about Sri Ramakrishna excited Naren's curiosity. In 1881, he was invited to sing at a house where Sri Ramakrishna was a guest. This was the first time they both met, and Sri Ramakrishna invited Narendra to come and visit him at Dakshineshwar. Naren was intrigued and puzzled by Sri Ramakrishna's personality. He had never met anyone in his life who had the innocence of a child, who had about him an air of intense delight, perpetually crying out loud and bursting into songs to express his joy in God, the Mother Kali, who evidently existed for him as a life presence. So he went to Dakshineshwar with a divided mind, 50% of it eager for self-dedication and devotion, 50% skeptical, impatient of the superstition due to his Western education influence. There, Sri Ramakrishna asked him to sing, and so he sang. What happened next was something extraordinary, where Sri Ramakrishna suddenly rose from his seat, led him to a private space, and started speaking very tenderly as an old friend, sobbing from time to time and speaking very affectionately, feeding him sweets. He made him promise that he will come back. Though Naren thought Sri Ramakrishna's behavior was eccentric, he couldn't dismiss him from his mind. He thought that if this man was mad, then even his madness was somehow holy, felt that he was in the presence of a saint and had already begun to love Sri Ramakrishna. During his second meeting with Sri Ramakrishna, he revealed himself as being endowed with supernatural powers, enabling Naren to have a superconscious experience or samadhi just with a gentle touch, a state in which all sense of personal identity vanishes and the real self is known. Later, Swami Vivekananda recalls that he crept near him and asked the question that he had asked others multiple times in his life. Sir, do you believe in God? Yes, said Sri Ramakrishna. Can you prove it, sir? Yes, he replied. How? Because I see him just as I see you, only much more intensely. This reply impressed Swami Vivekananda at once. For the first time in his life, he found a person who dared to say that he saw God, that religion was a reality to be felt, to be sensed in an infinitely more intense way than we can sense the world. After this, he became a frequent visitor to Dakshineshwar, found himself drawn into a circle of youthful disciples whom Sri Ramakrishna was training to lead a monastic life. Naren did not get influenced that easily. He had lots of doubts, had lots of questions, demanded a lot of explanation that eventually strengthened his faith and belief. In 1885, Sri Ramakrishna developed throat cancer and left his physical body in August 1886. Narain and few of the disciples held together, installed the ashes in a shrine, and resolved to renounce the world and take a monastic life. They lived without money, without food for days, slept on straw mats, yet they all joked and laughed usually, sang hymns and engaged in philosophic discussions and meditations, always feeling Sri Ramakrishna's presence in their midst. Gradually, they became restless for the life of a wandering monk. With staff and begging bowl, they wandered all over India, visiting shrines and places of pilgrimage, preaching, begging, passing months of meditation in lonely huts. These experiences were very valuable for Narain, who between 1890 to 93 acquired first-hand knowledge of India's hunger, poverty, nobility, and spiritual wisdom, which he was to carry with him on his journey to the West. He saw that India had a mission in the world as a force of spiritual regeneration, but he also saw that this force could not become effective until India's social conditions had been radically improved. Funding must be raised at schools, colleges, hospitals, and thousands of teachers and workers must be recruited and organized. It was then that he decided to go to US in search of help. Raja of Ramnath then suggested that he should go to the newly announced Chicago Parliament of Religions. He assumed the name of Vivekananda just before embarking on the journey to US at the suggestion of Maharaja of Khetri. Viveka means discrimination. Viveka means discrimination between real God and unreal sense perceptions. Ananda means divine bliss or peace that is experienced through realization of self. Part 3. His powerful message to the youth. His birthday, being celebrated as the National Youth Day, is of a great significance as Swami Vivekananda's message to youth has always been one of empowerment and self-reliance. He believed that young people like us have the potential to achieve great things and shape the world for the better, but that we must be willing to work hard and take responsibility for our own lives and actions. He encourages us to develop our minds, bodies, and spirits through education, self-discipline, and spiritual practices. Some key elements of Swami Vivekananda's message to us include: arise awake and stop not until the goal is reached, encouraging us to be ambitious, determined, and persistent in pursuing our goals and dreams. Take up one idea and make it your life, stressing the importance of focus and single-mindedness in achieving success. All power is within you, emphasizing the power of self-belief and self-confidence and encouraging us to believe in ourselves and our own abilities. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man, promoting the idea that education is a means of unlocking one's innate potential and inner wisdom. The greatest sin is to think yourself weak, encouraging us to have faith in ourselves and our abilities and to avoid self-doubt and self-depreciation. Be a hero always. Say, I have no fear, encouraging us to be brave, courageous, and to conquer our fears. Stand up, be bold, be strong, encouraging us to take charge of our own lives, be self-reliant and responsible. Overall, Swami Vivekananda's message to youth emphasizes the importance of self-discovery, personal development, and self-reliance. He believed that young people can make significant contribution to the world through hard work, dedication, and a steadfast commitment to their own ideals. From his heart, Swami Vivekananda had said, India needs thousands of men and women with muscles of iron and nerves of steel. We are all greatly blessed to be in Amma's divine presence, who has been living her life this way throughout One of our professors in our college who takes a course on communication said that there is no modern course on communication that teaches you to establish a relationship with another person in 15 seconds. Yet, we see day in and day out how Amma establishes a deep relationship, a kind of a spiritual bond with each of us in less than 15 seconds. Vivekananda has a rich voice, magnetic personality, gigantic structure like the sun. His only thought was, how do I share my Guru's message to the entire world? That's how we all should live our life. Our only thought should be, how do we become Amma's instruments so that her message reaches one and all? Offering these words at Amma's lotus feet. Om Shri Amriteshwariyai Namah. Om Shri Amriteshwariyai Namah. Om Shri Amriteshwariyai Namah. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Harihi Om.